I don't know what's worse. The fact that Chris Watts' personal YouTube channel has almost 1,300 followers with one horrible video, or the fact that he has 400 more subscribers than me. Hello, YouTube watchers. Welcome back. Today we're going to be reviewing possibly the worst video on YouTube. Some of you may have already seen this, but for those of you who haven't, Chris Watts put on a clinic on how to repair your relationship. It was an assignment for his community college communications class, and it was filmed in 2012, months before his marriage to Shanann. It's so painfully uncomfortable to watch, so I've done you a favor, and I've just picked out the key moments. Let's check out his opening remarks.
I'm doing my speech on relationship deterioration and repair, and this is my PowerPoint to help you. Deterioration. The relationship begins to fall apart, crumble, or fail. You have weakening bonds. You get bored of the everyday routine, and you get distractions such as work, hobbies, relationships, no matter how harmless, even at the job. You might meet a new person, and it could strengthen into something else, and could weaken the bond you have with the partner you have.
Ironically, he brings up meeting someone at work right off the top, and it's going to be a running theme in this video. But I have a feeling at this point in time, Chris Twats, as one of my watchers called him, and I love it, much more than Christine, so I'm just going to refer to him as Twats, which I feel perfectly sums up everything about him in this video. Anyhow, he had been engaged to Shanann for almost a year, and they were building their new home in Colorado ahead of their wedding. And I'm sure he saw Shanann as the one who might possibly meet someone at work, especially being as outgoing and engaging as she was in her role as a salesperson at Longmont Ford. Whereas up until his engagement, Twats couldn't keep a woman interested in him for more than 6 months, which he said was the longest relationship he had before Shanann. And I'm thinking, if his bland personality didn't turn them off, his mother probably did. Let's hear more from Chris.
You no longer experience closeness, or when your differences become more important than the similarities, you just pick apart your partner, and you don't see anything that you have in common anymore. You just see something he or she does, and it just gets on your nerves, and you just can't let that go. And you feel you might do better with someone else that you've met. You think that you can no longer that your partner is someone that you can't be with.
Speaking of things the other person does that gets on your nerves, have you noticed the little hand gestures Twats uses throughout? I recall they're the same gestures he used when he was being interrogated and the cops were closing in on him. And someone referred to this nervous tic as T-Rex arms. So again, Twats brings up leaving your relationship for someone else you've met. Those are likely his insecurities, but let's hear Twats pound that message home one more time.
You have two types of deterioration. You have sudden and you have gradual. Sudden would be an example of infidelity. When somebody is not faithful to their partner, the partners realize that the relationship cannot be sustained. Gradual would be if you met somebody at work or a new friendship has occurred, and as it goes on, you see that, okay, maybe this relationship has more potential than the relationship I have with my partner. And that would gradually push the old relationship out and push the new relationship in.
I can think of so many situations where a relationship can deteriorate, but Twats seems hung up on this specific scenario for some reason, and makes you wonder if he was constantly being cheated on in his very brief relationships. And did you notice that both his definition of gradual deterioration and sudden deterioration were pretty much the same thing? I mean, he could have just condensed that into one point, if you ask me. But fast forward to 2018. Chris indicates that there had been issues in his marriage for several years, enough so that apparently Shanann was fishing around for advice on divorce law in Colorado in early 2018. And I wonder if Dad bod Chris didn't think of leaving his marriage because he wasn't in a position to meet someone. Certainly, no one was after him for his sexy mind, and perhaps that was the catalyst for his physical transformation, to raise his self-esteem and attract someone he felt might show more potential as a partner. Although it seems he first employs this next relationship tactic in an attempt to repair things with Shanann.
Commitment the degree of commitment affects your relationship. According to Hirofumi, not surprisingly, commitment is especially strong when individuals are satisfied with their relationship and grows weaker as individuals become less satisfied. You have to ask yourself 3 questions when you're in a relationship. Do I have a desire to keep this relationship going? Do I have a moral obligation to stay in this relationship? Or is it a necessity for me to stay in this relationship? According to my research, sometimes a necessity could be children. Sometimes when you have children and your relationship starts to deteriorate, a child could help repair it.
Wow, that was fantastic advice, Chris. Use your children as a relationship crutch. And guess what happens when that relationship fails? You don't need your crutches anymore, which means Bella and Cece were all part of the relationship package. You can't kill one without killing the others. And then the fetus, Nico, who he wanted for the worst possible reason, and it backfired.
According to Bloomstein and Schwartz, when a relationship breaks up, it's generally the more attractive one that leaves, which I agree with somewhat and then I disagree with.
I just had to include this clip for a laugh. From an academic point of view, why would you even cite an opinion if you're going to immediately follow it with, I agree somewhat, and I disagree, and then not follow up with any argument either way? And he was probably as decisive about issues in his marriage, which is probably what forced Shanann to take control. And he's so nervous, stuttering and stumbling over his words. You'd think he was giving this speech in front of a dozen strangers. But it's these 4 people that he knew. In fact, he and Shanann had been staying with one of the couples while in Colorado. And honestly, I've seen more confident and engaging presentations from elementary school kids.
And keep channels of communication open. Always disclose your feelings. Don't keep things bottled up because it will later come back to bite you. Possible solutions. Discuss solutions that both you and your partner win. Don't have a win-lose solution. The win-lose solution, sometimes when somebody loses, you'll have hostility and you'll have resentment. Sometimes they may not show it, but they will be thinking it.
Twats should have discussed the lose-lose solution, which he ultimately went with. He was so very clearly disconnected from what he was reading off his computer screen, and I'm convinced he pulled this topic out of a hat. And he's talking about relationships in the same way he'd, I'm assuming, discuss a set of socket wrenches, but with less emotion. No heartwarming anecdotes about his parents' relationship, although maybe that's a bad example. Or he could have related the presentation to his engagement and how he loves his fiancée and they want to prioritize communication. He's just reading bullet points and quoting a bunch of nonsense on relationships that he apparently Googled 10 minutes prior to starting his presentation.
When in repair, the stage is not always pursued. Sometimes people, when the relationship starts to dissolve, repair is not an option and they want to get away and start new.
So he wanted to start anew with a completely new way of talking, apparently. In a matter of a few years, if you'll notice, he lost his southern accent. And within a matter of weeks, he can't complete a sentence without including the word like 5 times, which brings me to two other points on his vocal transformation. A, did Shanann not notice how twats was suddenly overusing the word like because she wasn't overusing it? And B, it shows how easily he mimics other people as a means to fit in and seem normal to them. Something to think about.
And in conclusion, I'd like to say that relationships are hard, but they're worth it in the end. And as the Swedish proverb says, a double joy is a shared joy, and a double sorrow is not a shared sorrow. Thank you.
My God, that was just horrible all around. Bad camera work, poor research, no connection with anyone in that room, and a monotone delivery. And Shanann gave him a good job in the comments, so either she had very low expectations for him, or this was considered a very impressive attempt at communication for twats. And he got that Swedish proverb at the end wrong, because as I was reading, I was thinking that makes absolutely no sense, much as with everything else he says. But he said a double joy is a shared joy, and a double sorrow is not a shared sorrow. But it should actually be shared joy is a double joy. So if you have joy, you share it with someone else and it's doubled. And shared sorrow is half a sorrow. So when you share your sorrow with someone, the burden is halved. The sad part is, Shanann saw potential here in this doughy dork. She saw someone who was different from her ex-husband, who was apparently the dominant one of the two. So she cleaned this guy up and gave him a social circle. And he mentions at one point during one of his police interviews that most of the people he knew through Shanann. And as soon as another woman looked his way, he seized the moment and set out on that new life he mentions. If only twats had sent Shanann a link to this cringy video, she probably would have gotten on the same page as him in wanting to separate, and as soon as possible. I can only hope she would have come to that conclusion 2 minutes into watching this crap. But anyhow, stay tuned. Next, I will be reviewing a speech by Cindy and Ronnie Twats on raising well-adjusted children. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, and comment below.